Good morning, good day, or good evening. My name is Eli Rowe, and this is the Middle-Aged Witch Podcast. But I do want to say first, thank you very much for coming on with me again, because I really like our conversations. It's been very nice.
Thank you, me too.
Dani Johnson, witch purveyor of fine goods in Sharon, Pennsylvania. Pendulum reader, dowsing rod reader, pet lover, Cancer, mermaid in a past life. What
Yes.
else? What else?
Oh, avid reader.
Egyptian priestess in a past
Thank
life.
you. Thank you.
Um,
Atlantis liver. Like that
Atlantean.
sounds like, yeah, thank you. You said
Atlantean.
that much better. Yeah, that sounded like I was saying a body part.
Atlantis liver. My great aunt had that. It's tragic. You know what? Talk to me about Atlantis.
Well, years ago I did some past life things and discovered that one of my past lives I lived in Atlantis. And speeding things up really quickly to present,
Mhm.
you actually had a message. Do you want to talk about it?
Sure. Okay. Just a little bit. Um,
Okay.
uh, because we also know that you have really deep ties to ancient Egypt.
Hmm.
And not that those two had anything in common, to my knowledge, at
Or
this
mine.
point, but a few weeks ago, my husband and I went to an orchestral performance with my sister-in-law. She lives a few towns away, so we had to travel over high desert, and it was like dark. We're coming home, and it's dark, and it's stormy, and it's like scary, and it was really late because it was like 9:30, which is an hour past my bedtime. And
Sure.
so I was like really sleepy and drowsy, and my husband's like, well, I'm going to put on this lecture that I've been listening to while you rest. And I was like, cool, don't care. So he puts it on, and it was Graham Hancock, which is, really outside of my husband's wheelhouse. He's not he's not out there like me. But he puts this on very apropos of nothing, had nothing to do with me or anything that I believe in or anything that I'm interested in. He's just putting on, he's listening to it. And as we're pulling in home, and again, this is like, 2-hour drive or something. And this interview has been playing. And as we're kind of approaching home, um, Graham Hancock is saying something about how the myth of Atlantis, as it was told by Plato, was it Plato?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, According to this myth, the storyteller who's describing what happened to the people of Atlantis, as Atlantis was being destroyed, as it was being swallowed up by the sea, some of the people who lived there were able to escape. And a lot of the people who escaped landed and settled in what we now know as Egypt. So these Atlanteans were like the original ancient Egyptians. And that stuck out in my mind. Like I just woke up wide awake as he was saying that. And I had slept through most of this lecture on the drive home. I wasn't hearing it. But when he started to talk about that, I just woke up and I was like, oh God, I need to tell Dani, because that's the link. That explains why she's got this past life reference to Atlantis, but then also she's getting all of these messages from ancient Egypt and all of the lives, not the lives, but all of the relationships that she had there with the people in that time. And so, of course, I had to tell you.
Yes. And whoosh, mind blown. Like when you did,
So
because
cool that those
finally
things
we had
happen.
that connection, like, to, like you said, to both of those things. And for me, when I first discovered about Atlantis, the number one thing that stuck out to me most was my feelings that come so strong of suffocation,
Mm,
like feeling whether I can't be myself, or tight spaces, feeling claustrophobic. But my other past life, well, all of them also said that I was a healer, aka witch,
Mhm.
which I wouldn't have never felt comfortable to be myself because we were accused and,
Mhm.
all the fun things. So
Yeah.
yeah, it makes a lot of sense when you put it all together.
It does, but,
As it starts to
it also, kind of it it gives one cause to wonder why there are so many common threads in all of these past lives. And it's like at some point, am I going to learn my lesson so that I can live a different life, or do I just have to keep repeating this cycle? How many times
Right.
do I have to learn this lesson?
Yes, and especially now with, like, eclipse season and retrograde, like, with
Mhm.
all this stuff going on, you have to work really hard to be mindful not to force anything right now because whatever is happening right now, it's because it's something that needs to be removed or move you on to the next phase, the next step, whatever it is. So,
Mhm.
like, you have like, during this time period, you really just have to, like, "Okay, cool, cool."
Yeah, and that's hard. It's hard for a lot of people.
Mhm.
It's hard for me. I hate sitting and like stewing in my feelings. I'm so
Yes, you do.
averse to that. And I know that that's part
Yeah.
of, that's why the reason I keep having to do that is because I'm so resistant to it, because
Mhm.
I push against that a lot. But I always feel like when especially Mercury retrograde season hits, I'm always like, oh God, I'm just gonna have to stew in my own gross juices for a while and then
Yes.
and really
That's a great way to put it. Yes.
come to terms with some things that need to change. Because it does feel like not that there is no forward momentum, but just
Mhm.
that we have to like
Sit
I don't
in
know,
it.
like when you were little, because you had really long, thick, beautiful hair, but like when you were little and you would have this like fat knot in your hair and you couldn't like comb through it and you just have to
Even
like
now.
sit and tease it out and tease it out and tease it out. And it's so painful and it takes
Mhm.
so long. And you just feel like, can I just cut this out? But then, you finally get it out and like everything's smooth. Like it's like that, like just trying to
Mhm.
untangle just this gross, murky knot. And the process isn't fun and it's not smooth and it doesn't feel like this beautiful, glorious rebirth when it's done. You're just like, oh, thank fuck. Finally,
Yes. And
finally.
I think one of the important things to, mention too is that it's different for everyone. Like, just
True.
because I'm a Cancer, you're a Libra, so, for us, we're gonna experience something different. Everybody is going to experience something different based off, of course, their, like, birth chart and all their
Mhm,
stuff. So, it's gonna affect everybody differently. If I'm tired as all get out, the person across the street could have all the ambition and energy in the world. So,
mhm.
like, it varies for everyone. So, yeah, this could affect
That's
everybody
true.
differently.
I don't know why I don't get to be the energy person. But
I
it's
feel
fine.
you.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
You said something just a second ago that, shoot, I made my brain want to follow that path. And then we talked about something else and I forgot it again. So, like, you made mention to like birth charts and how,
Mhm,
we all react to things differently just based on our birth charts because, one Libra can vary widely from a different Libra. Um, just based on everything else that's in our birth chart. There's so much individualism. Um, but I wanted to ask how all of that has been going for you because I know that you've been pursuing astrology recently
mhm.
and really trying to delve in and tease out all the extra meaning that there is because it's just so much more than I'm a Cancer, I'm a Libra, I'm a Pisces. There's so much more to it than that. How's that been going for you?
Um, well, I did take a hiatus for a
Mhm,
little bit. But someone I recently, I would say what, within the last 6 months here, right? Someone I've been working with, isn't giving me the option anymore to, not, get back on that train. And that is the Infernal Stoess. Um, he presented himself to me like, oh, geez, I don't know, like 6 months to a year ago, I'd
Let me just
say.
interject really quickly for people who aren't
Yeah.
familiar with the term infernal. This is also commonly known as a demon.
Yes.
I don't care for the D word. I think that there are a lot of negative connotations to that. It feels like a
Mm.
little bit like a slur. But in the common terms, this is demon, an
Yes.
infernal,
Thank you.
stolus. Yes.
Yes. And for those who don't know much about him, he is a pusher of all things astrology, getting to know yourself, understanding you. But he's also very big on learning like plants and herbs, stones, anything related to the earth. And it's quite comforting once you get to know him and learn about him because, again, with the way a lot of us were raised, we were made to believe that it was just bad, just evil, not good. And the energy that comes now, some of them do have a stronger energy. And again, it affects everybody differently
Hmm.
with what you feel. I had a visitor for my niece at one point from someone and my fur babies were not feeling that energy, so I got the message and then asked them to kindly leave just because it was just a strong energy for my
Hmm.
kids. But his energy is very comforting because he wants me to better myself, and so the
And
way
also,
I
it seems like he really wants you to understand yourself too.
Mhm.
And that's why there's
Yeah.
this big emphasis on understanding that birth chart because they're so rich with information.
They are, they really are, and coinciding that with, the shadow work that I've been doing and the hard work
Mhm.
that goes into that, we've mentioned this already today, just how all of these things eventually weave their way into each other, and it's, like, really beautiful. Once you start seeing all the pieces, you're like, "Wow, this is something." Um, so yeah, the way I teach myself is I look up everything, like, I have my birth chart, obviously, but, like, I have these notebooks, and I write what each house means, what 1 through 6 mean, what 7 through 12 mean, I write down literally everything so that way, and I learn it in pieces so I'm not overwhelmed
Mhm.
because
There's a
I
lot
think
to know.
all of us know that with any part of any of this, it can be very overwhelming.
Yeah.
So learning bits and pieces at a time has been really helpful.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It, witchcraft is like that. You're like, oh, witchcraft, you're going to open this whole can of worms. Every worm has its own can of worms. So
Yes.
anything, any aspect of witchcraft that you really try to like get into and learn more about, you're just going to be like, oh, Jesus, there's like so much more
Yes.
to learn.
Yes.
But that's
Teaching
what's
some.
fun about it. That's what makes it
It
so
is.
interesting. And that's what it's also humbling, I find,
Mm.
because there is no being an expert. There's just not.
No.
We're all scholars, and maybe we're at different points along our road. And, the thing too is that some folks are going to have much deeper knowledge in one aspect of the craft, and others are going to have, but we all fill each other's gaps. And that's why it's important to have friends who are learning along with us.
Yes, and it never stops.
Mm-mm.
It never stops. I mean, it just keeps going and going, and you discover this, and then it leads you to this, and then this, and you're like, "Oh," and then you think that's it, and you're like, "No, that's not." And then
Yeah,
it's like it's the best. I love
it
it.
is the best. I do love it. I do love it. Do you find, and maybe this is maybe not, have you found that like when you meet somebody, do you sometimes have a really good feel for like what that person's sign is?
Mm, that actually, no.
I
I
was
don't
me neither. Me neither. That's what I was gonna say. I was gonna say
know.
sometimes, and sometimes there are people are like really obvious. I don't know. They're
Mhm.
like every once in a while
Oh,
I'll
yeah.
meet somebody and I'll be like, she's an Aries. But
Mhm.
but rarely because I feel like those other aspects of the chart are so much more influential than we often give them credit for.
Mhm.
Somebody might, if you've got somebody who's a Libra sun, But an Aries moon, sometimes that Aries moon is a lot more influential than that Libra sun is, just because of the circumstances in their life and just the things that they've
Yes.
they've experienced. And they're, you know, my personality is affected just by the way that, my family is. My
Mhm.
mom is a Scorpio, and that has affected me. My sister's a Pisces. She has affected me. So, my Libra doesn't just get to be the be all end all. There's so
Mhm.
much influence from outside in resources,
Yeah.
and also just from those other aspects of our chart. You mentioned that some of these infernals have really light, comforting, beautiful energy, and Stolas does. That's for sure.
Mhm.
But that some of these infernals, you can understand sometimes, I think, why demons have gotten such a bad rap. I kind of feel like they carry so much knowledge and so much information. And I think that that's probably why, especially the early church, would have demonized them and made them seem like really scary and bad, because this is this source of knowledge that we're not getting from, the approved God source or the approved priest source, which is actually where all of that information comes from. Um, but we can approach these entities on our own, and they can approach us, and we can
Mhm.
like learn from each other and have these relationships with them. But you're right, some of those personalities are very heavy. Sometimes they don't approach us like as gently as maybe we would like them to. I had a visitor
Mhm.
um who you were telling me about Stolas, and I have this deck of cards. It's actually an oracle deck, but it's, let me grab it, actually called Occult Tarot. So actually a tarot deck, but I like it more as an oracle deck.
Mhm.
So I was like, I don't know, you were telling about Stolas, and so I'm like just playing with my deck, because every one of these cards has a demon on it, but it also has just like a little, like a blurb, and it talks a little bit about their personality and just some of the wisdom that they can convey. And so I was looking
Mhm.
for Stolas because I just wanted to see what my card said compared to what your own research had told you. And as I was playing with this deck, this card flies out, and it was this card. This is Eligos. And so it jumped the deck while I was playing with my cards. And
Mhm.
oh, I went out of focus. Come back. And sometimes how it is, like if you're shuffling a tarot deck or you're shuffling an oracle deck and a card jumps out, sometimes it's because there's this particular message that that card has for you. And so I set that card aside because I don't typically work with infernals, have not.
Mhm.
And I thought, well, sometimes a card just jumps the deck and it doesn't mean anything. So maybe it just doesn't mean anything. But I set it aside and I was like, all right, well,
Yeah.
if it means something nice, if it doesn't mean anything, okay. So I put this card aside and I had it on my little shelf, and I just sort of left it. And I was like, all right, well, maybe there's a message there and maybe there's not. If there's a message, I'm open to hearing it. And so I did a little, like, not even much research, I'll be honest. It was very lazy research, like a 2-minute Google search about this particular infernal and what he might appreciate as, just some kind of an offering, or just, a little hey there. Because I wasn't offering anything. I was just introducing myself, because I wasn't sure. Just because somebody wants to work with me doesn't mean that and I'm obligated to work with them.
Mhm.
But I was like opening the channel, and it said something about uh he likes, very dark chocolate, like bittersweet chocolate, red wine, spicy food, and blah, blah, blah. So I was like, well, you know what? I've got some red wine. So I'll put that out next to his little card on the shelf. It's not on an altar. Like he's not, he wasn't at that level. Like we weren't at that level. I
Mhm.
didn't know him like
Mhm.
that. So I
Mhm.
didn't put him on the altar. I just kind of had him on the shelf, with just like this, again, just an opening. Here's some red wine if you like it. If you have something to tell me, I'm open to hearing it. That's kind of all. I just like left it at that. And so then later that day, and like this shelf is right here, it's here all day. Nothing ever bothers this shelf. It doesn't get disturbed. But later I'm like working at my desk here, and the glass of wine just dumped over. It just dumped. And I said, either he's pissed at me and this message is not a good message, or maybe he doesn't like cab sav, or maybe that's just how he says hello. So I cleaned it all up. And um then I got my dowsing rods out later. And I think I even told you about that after it happened, but I like hadn't investigated it anymore. I just sort of
Mhm.
cleaned everything up, put everything back the way that it was. But then later I was able to go and I got my dowsing rods out and I was like, okay, like, are you angry with me? No, that wasn't it. And I'm like, so I'm just asking this line of questioning, do you have a message for me? Yes, I do. So what was with the wine? Do you just not like the wine? And it comes down to he just didn't like that wine.
Mhm.
But but that's the energy that he brings, like if he
Mhm.
doesn't like something, he's just going to slap it out of my hand. And so that's just the difference between, some energies and some entities versus others. And so now he's got um like I put like it's this nice wrought iron knife out there for him.
Mhm.
I've got him some nice very hot chili peppers that he enjoys. Like those are much more well received than that
Mhm.
cab sav. He's not
Yes.
a fan.
Yes. And just to show the difference, like you're talking about right now, a perfect example. Last week, I had a dream of a crow,
Mhm,
and it came right up to me. And it was like sitting in the window, and I just wanted to like touch it and say hi. And in my dream, I was having a full-blown conversation with this crow. And so I forgot about it. We'll talk about that dreams. But um I forgot about it, and then I saw a video of a crow, and it just, like, brought the dream right back to me because, he when you first see him, sometimes he appears as a crow or an owl.
Stolas, you mean?
Yes. So, it came to me again after I completely forgot about it when I saw a video of a crow. So, I opened up conversation with him and just asked him straight up, like, "Is that your way of saying hi?"
Mhm,
And he was like, "Yes, get back to your shit." But, like, in the nicest way possible, you
mhm,
know? Um, because I had fallen off for the last 2 or 3 weeks, of focusing that being one of my main focuses is studying my birth chart and learning more about myself.
mhm,
And so he was there to kindly remind me with a crow in my dream, talking to a crow in my dream, that, girl, get back to your stuff.
mhm,
So he is very, he can not be subtle, but that was a very subtle way of saying, like, you were doing really good. Come
mhm.
on.
Get back on track. That
Yeah.
is nice. That's very gentle.
Yes.
Do you feel, I feel, I know you well, and it does seem as though a lot of important messages that you receive come to you at least first or in part through your dreams.
Mhm.
Do you feel like that's been a really big part of honing your craft and developing your own skills and your own talents?
Recently, yes, big time. Um, it first started over a year ago. Because I just want to say too, the more that you trust, um, and open yourself up to things,
Mhm,
as you go learning, the more it just kind of comes at you, whether it's good or bad,
mhm,
so I think as we go along, the more things open up to us. And so messages I didn't receive 5 years ago, I start receiving, a year ago. So yes, well over a year ago, my dreams are messages for myself, but also I dream about other people's loved ones who have passed over.
mhm,
And so I get messages for them, for their loved ones who are living, to let them know how they're doing. And my first one, For it to be the first one, I mean, it was deep. It was really deep. The dad was letting me know what a shock his passing was to him too, and I felt his pain.
Oh.
And I felt it so deeply and how badly he missed his family. But and so another thing too, it that coincides with this is interpretation. It's
Mm,
like when we do our tarot pulls and our
yeah.
oracle pulls, it's all interpreting the message. So for me, we were in this room and the family was in another room. And everybody kind of looked glum, and he was really just forlorn, completely sad. And so I grabbed him by the hand. This was the father. I
Mhm,
grabbed him by the hand and I pulled him into like a parlor room, and I put on a record player and I started playing music and we started dancing, and his face lit up, letting me know how happy he was now and he was at peace and that he was with them, and some other personal messages
mhm,
for the son in particular. But yeah, wow. And I haven't it's crazy, some dreams um stick with you, like you'll never forget them. I remember every vivid detail of that dream, and I probably will for the rest of my life. And then you wake up sometimes and literally you blink 5 times and the dream is gone. But that's why, and I've been getting on that's why I'm a big I started a dream journal, and it is because even looking back like a year and a half ago, what was that? But then it makes sense to something that happened like 3 months ago.
mhm.
So, yeah, lots of dream stuff. Lots of dream stuff.
Lots of dream stuff, and especially for you because you're very, very psychic and always since I've known you. Um, but and dreams, I don't know. I feel like sleep is yes, like it's very restorative and it's important to our mental health and our physical well-being and all of those things. Yeah, 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 yeah. But there is
Mm,
so much more to it. I just really feel like that's when we are able to expand and explore and like travel so much farther and in a way that like our conscious mind can't get in its own way, which
mm.
is such a big problem for so many of us, and me too. That like we'll be trying to meditate or we'll be trying to astral project or we'll be trying to communicate or divine, and there's just like this mental block there, just something that our rational mind keeps bumping up against. But when we sleep, all of that kind of breaks down and it's so much easier and we can go so much farther.
And
And
we do.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, as far as like going places, yes.
well,
I
yeah,
mean, we do go so much further, but we
you've
actually
been
go
traveling
places
a
too.
lot lately.
Yeah. It's a lot.
Mm, mm-hmm.
I wake up tired after 9, 10 hours of sleep. I wake up exhausted.
You just wake up and need a nap.
Yeah.
um
You wait, can I say something
yeah,
else
absolutely.
about messages really
Yeah.
quick?
Mm-hmm.
So one day you and I were on a friend time call,
Mm-hmm.
and I was showing you how, I had like cleaned up my altar and how I made space for those I love and all of that. And as I'm going through my altar, showing you, everybody, something happened to you when I got in front of Adonis.
Yeah. Actually, and you know
Yeah.
what? I actually talked about that on last week's episode. Um,
Oh,
because you were like, and there's your altar is behind you too.
yes.
Um, but like, yeah, I was kind of like explaining how that went. Like she was, panning her camera from left to right because you had made all these changes on your altar and you'd made all these additions to it. And I hadn't seen it in a minute. So you're just kind of like updating me everything that's going on in this altar. And you panned past this one area, and I just like my throat closed up. And my like I couldn't breathe. And it was like, and I was like, oh shit, somebody's got something to say. And I like made you run back and you're like, oh, what? That's just Adonis. And I was like, Mr. Adonis has some messages to convey. And
Yes, and he
and
did
we like
too.
ended up going down this whole road with him. And then that's why I did like last week's episode was on Adonis because we kind of brought all these things up, all of the lessons that you've been able to learn from him because he was with you like early
From
on.
the
Was he
beginning.
I
Yes.
couldn't remember if he was like, if not the first, he was definitely one of the first entities
He
that approached you.
he was one of the first in a grouping,
Hmm.
but it was so cute the way he came because he was like, I'm here. I'm cute. But like I'm here. I'm not gonna like push you.
Hmm.
Like just know that I'm here. Like it was so
He,
cute.
I love him and I love his story. And, and that's what I was really trying to Im impart last week when we were talking about him, because I know that, he's so renowned. Like his beauty is just legendary. Like that's
Hmm.
the important thing that keeps coming up every time you read about or talk about Adonis. Is just, oh God, he was so legendarily beautiful, and he caused all of these battles between these goddesses, and like Zeus kept having to intervene because he was just so handsome, and it was like causing all of these problems. But like he's more than that,
Oh,
and
he's so much more than that.
it just is so important to like listen when especially a deity like that, who you don't really hear too much about. We hear a lot about like Hecate, and for good reason.
Hmm.
She's a powerhouse. Isis and
Aphrodite.
Aphrodite, like all
Hmm.
of these are really strong, especially I feel like the female deities really, and again, they totally should have a really large hold of a lot of sway amongst our community. But then you've got someone like Adonis who's coming in to just remind everybody, like, hey, sometimes it's okay to just like be who you are and accept who you
Yeah.
are and love who you are, and don't worry about like all of this image and how we present ourselves and how other people uh, you know uh, consume us as
Hmm.
commodities. And like there's just so much more to it than that. And that's like really what I was trying to get at
Oh,
last
yeah.
week with him, is that his whole bag for me, and he's got different messages for everyone,
Hmm.
but I just have felt like his really like the main thing that he's been trying to get across, at least with me and for me, is that like it's okay to like let the superficial go, and let
Yes.
all of that flow away, because like once
Yes.
that's gone, he had a very untimely early demise because of that, because
Hmm.
of all this emphasis on his external beauty. But there was more to him than that. Like he was like this fierce hunter, and he was like really good at things, and but that like nobody cared about that. Like everybody was just so
No.
fixated on what he could provide for them as a decorative being, and he was
Hmm.
just not that. So
Yeah, I completely agree with you on all of that. And the connection to beauty and sex and all
mhm.
of these things. And
Mhm.
for him and I, like the message was I had been, I've been struggling with, my appearance and how I feel about myself, my size, all of that stuff for quite some time. And um one day after I did some mirror gazing, quite a bit of mirror gazing, I started, and I'll just put this right out there. I started like doing things naked again.
Mhm.
I like, brushing my hair after the
Mhm.
shower before putting on my clothes and just like things, moving around, putting my hair in braids, like, just
Mhm.
like hanging out, like here I am, boop, 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 and that was what I needed from him, that confidence. So I went from thinking, oh, ew, I can't look at that, to I would be considered a goddess type
Mhm.
in his day. So yes, he's reminding me, girl, this is what you got. Like, love it, love all
Mhm.
of it. And it's a mixture of the outward plus the inward,
Mhm.
because he is a constant reminder to love myself just as much. So, yeah, I'm grateful to him for that. Yeah.
Now, the last time that you came on and talked to me, we
Mhm.
were talking about pendulums
Mhm.
and your pendulum readings and your divination. And I know that you still do that, and that's awesome. But I also know that you've been using dowsing rods
Mhm.
of late. How's that been
Yes.
going?
It's going.
How do we like that?
I love it so much. So I don't even know how to put it in words. It feels like a whole different kind of communication. I still love my
Mhm.
pendulums, they were my first babies. Like, oh, I love you. You know? But there's just something different about the dowsing rods. It feels like it's actually like going through you. I mean, it literally feels like the communication is traveling from you. That's what it
Mhm.
feels like. So, yeah, and like I don't know. It's saying yes, like,
Mhm.
oh yeah, that's what it feels like. It's like electricity, literally.
Do you feel like, where do you feel like I know you're saying like it comes through you. Do you have a sense of where the messages originate from? Or do you just feel like this is just like some universal truth and that's where the answers come from? Or do you feel like, if I'm asking a question like, oh, from my loved one or something, do you feel like that information comes from that loved one? Or is it
Um,
both? Who knows?
well, for me, a lot of times I do feel like it's an overall message, like an influence of the universe,
Hmm.
my higher self, my deities, my ancestors. Lately, a lot of it has been my ancestors.
Mm.
A lot. And then but it's different for when I'm doing it for other people because a lot of times their people will come through.
Okay.
So it's not really me, it's them. Like I did a reading for someone last week or the week before, and a friend of theirs came through and I felt that friend and I got goosebumps and
Mm.
felt like the friend was literally saying things to them. So yeah. Yeah, so
Mm.
there isn't one or the other. It's like literally a combination of all the things coming through.
Nice.
And a lot of times, I'm sure you've noticed this too. I feel like I get the answer in the message prior to the answer coming through.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I
Um,
have noticed that because I have mine as well. And I'll hold them and then like I'll ask a question. I'll be like, oh yeah, that'll be a yes. And then it is. Yeah,
mhm.
you do feel like, and so that's when you say like, I feel like the message comes through me, like that's how I interpret it because it comes through me and I feel what it's going to be. And then
Mhm.
it diverts through the rods themselves.
Yes. And
And it's just a
you
nice
have
confirmation.
it is, yes. And you have also noticed how much your intuition has been playing a part in your
Hmm.
life the
Yeah.
last like few months. I mean, it's really, and again, that just goes to show the more that we do,
Hmm.
the more and
It's like a muscle. Yeah.
it is.
That you
And
work.
I have this terrible habit of interrupting people um and saying things, but it's because I know what they're going to say, so I say it first, or I know like what they need to it's awful. It's something I need to work on because I'm really bad at it. But it just occurred to me though, like at one point you just get to this stage where you're like, I'm not going to ignore that anymore. This
Hmm.
is what it is.
Yeah. I feel
Because
that a lot with tarot readings.
mhm
When I've when I do most of the tarot readings that I do are for people that I don't know,
mhm
which is nice because it actually makes it easier for me to trust those feelings that I get. Because if I
mhm
know somebody and I'm doing a reading for them and I'll want to say something, but I'll be like, well, but I already know a lot about their situation. So is this just me telling them what I want them to hear? Or is this really a message from the cards? But when I'm doing tarot reading for somebody that I don't particularly know well, or just, a client that I've met online that I don't know at all, and a message will come through, I feel a lot more comfortable just telling them, you know what, I'm just really getting a sense that whatever it may be, because I don't have any stake in their situation. I don't know anything else about their circumstance except for what the cards are conveying. And that has really been a blessing for me because it always is confirmed by the client to one degree or another. We're like, oh, you know what? That's true because of whatever reason. And things that I just wouldn't have any reason to know
yeah
because I don't know this person at all. I don't know where they live.
mhm
I don't know where they work. I don't know their family members. I don't know their friends. I don't know anything about them at all. And so when these impressions come through, it's a lot easier for me to just say what's coming through my head because,
Mhm.
you know, because it's there's just I can't possibly be, using some prior knowledge of this person and their circumstances
Mhm.
to make this kind of a statement.
Yeah.
That's been really helpful. And that's why when people are trying to practice divination or they're learning new methods, I always encourage them to do as much reading as they can for other people.
Mhm. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, regarding divination too,
Hmm.
another thing I wanted to say is that oracle deck that you gifted me for Yule.
Mm.
I mean, how many times do I blow you up with pictures of
Oh
like,
yeah.
"Girl,
Yeah,
look at this
it's a
pool
beautiful
today."
deck
It's
too. That's a cool deck.
oh, it's the best deck ever. Like, it is. It really,
It's
really
the
is.
shadow. What's it called? The shadow. It's the shadow. I don't
Shadow and
remember.
light? Shadow and light or I don't either. Yeah. So,
Oracle of Shadows and Light, Lucy Cavendish, artwork by Jasmine Beckett Griffith.
yes.
Cavendish is a cool name.
Oh,
Yeah,
this
the
is
art in
a
that
cool
deck
deck.
is so beautiful.
And it is so spot on. Every week, at the end of the week before a new week begins, I always do with Recard Pool. And oh my gosh, this thing is so on point every time. I'm like, okay.
I
Yes.
love that. I don't know. I love the relationship that we can build with these different divination tools.
Mhm.
It's special. They
It
they
is.
just seem like these just inert
Mhm.
things, just cards, but they're not. They're so much more than that. And you can really build a relationship with them. And there are
Mhm.
some that I can't work with. There are some decks that I get and because they look cool and I play with them, I'm like, I don't know, it doesn't speak to me.
Mhm.
And that's fine too. But I don't know, just sometimes, and it's just different pendulums and different dowsing rods, or, people read tea leaves. Like there are a lot of different ways that people perform divination. And
Yes.
it's another reason that I just like to encourage people to try everything. Something's
Mhm.
gonna click with you. Something will
Yes.
touch you.
Yes. I first started with tarot,
Hmm.
not knowing. I mean, I think a lot of us do.
Hmm.
Um, and I love my decks that I have. They're over there behind me. I love them. I love them very much. And every now and then I'll do a pull for myself, but my main go-to is the pendulum and the dowsing rods and the oracle deck now because that's what spoke to me and that's what I feel the most connection with. So and it's like, it's not a bad thing if you go to try something and learn something and it's not your jam. Like, that
Hmm.
doesn't make you a bad witch. We don't live in
No,
boxes. Like, there are no rules. We can do whatever we want. If it's not you, it's not you, but there will be something that is. And when you find it, you're going to be like, oh, yes.
it is nice because when you do find it and you start to feel, I don't know, you just can feel it.
Hmm.
You really do. You're like, oh, that came from me, but it came from somewhere else too. That was like,
Hmm.
it was me, but extra. It was me, but
Yes.
more.
Yes.
That's how you can, I don't know, that's how it starts. You get that little
It's like
tickle.
appetizer and dessert.
So nice. So nice. All right.
Mhm.
We've run out of time for today, but we are going to start meeting on Instagram Live more frequently. We've talked about
Mhm.
that. I don't know that we have a schedule quite yet, but we'll be announcing it ahead of time, a day or two in advance, the
Mhm.
date and times that we're going to be going on and doing live. So if people have questions or if they just want to say something or, just see what the topic of the day is, because we never know.
Yeah,
Never
yeah,
know.
and,
We never know what we're going to
um
talk about.
right. No, no. But for the one that's coming up,
Mhm,
if anybody has questions about what we talked about today and or want to know more
mhm,
or want to know about things we've talked about where they can find it. And then, of course, every week your podcast, people have a lot to say and they send you
yeah,
the emails, they have
mhm,
questions,
mhm.
their own stories. So this is a good opportunity for them to come on and say, "Hey, I listened to this episode. Thank you. Like, do you know much about this?" So, yeah, it's a really good opportunity.
Yeah, yeah, in real time too, because there's not
Mm-hmm.
going to be a delay because, my inbox is deep. So
Yeah.
it's hard to get to the bottom of it some days, but um
Right.
yeah, so we'll be announcing on Instagram, and it's at middle-aged witch or at
The Wandering Soul Writer.
the wandering soul writer. And so I'll have links to
Yes.
both of those in the episode description as well.
Yes.
All right, thank you so much, Dani.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
All right.
May our troubles be less and our blessings be more, and nothing but happiness come through our door. The information presented is the author's opinion and does not constitute any health or medical advice. The content of this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only and is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any condition or disease. Please seek advice from your healthcare provider for your personal health concerns.